Close your eyes for just a moment and let the world around you grow quiet. Imagine that it is the year 1320, somewhere in the English countryside. The sun has not yet risen. There are no glowing streetlights outside your window, no gentle hum of electricity, no warm shower waiting for you in the morning. The only light you have comes from a single tallow candle, its small flame trembling as cold air slips through the cracks of a wooden cottage. Now imagine something even stranger. You are not visiting the Middle Ages. You are living in them. You are an ordinary medieval peasant, and before this day is over, nearly every hour will ask something from you. Your back, your hands, your stomach, your hope. There are no weekends to look forward to, no vacations, no days off because you feel tired. Every sunrise is another test of survival, and every sunset is simply a quiet reward for making it through. Many of us picture medieval villages as peaceful places, with charming cottages, green fields, and simple lives. But the truth hidden beneath those peaceful images was far heavier. For millions of people, life was not an adventure. It was a constant struggle against hunger, cold, exhaustion, disease, and the uncertainty of tomorrow. Tonight, you won't be watching history from a comfortable distance. Instead, you will wake before dawn, walk through muddy fields, carry impossible burdens, and discover what one ordinary day truly felt like for someone who had almost nothing. As you settle into your blankets and allow your breathing to become slower, let the story carry you gently through another world. There is no need to remember every detail. Simply let the quiet rhythm of history drift through your thoughts as the night grows deeper. I'm Kushi, and this is Sleepy History Tales Official. Now, let's begin one miserable day as a medieval peasant. Take a slow, comfortable breath in, and let it drift out just as gently. There is nothing you need to do now except listen. The world around you begins to fade, replaced by another time, another place, another life. A soft blanket of mist rests over a quiet English village. The narrow dirt paths are empty, disappearing into the pale gray morning like forgotten trails. Small wooden cottages stand silently beneath that blanket of fog, their weathered walls darkened by years of rain and cold winters. Their roofs, covered with thick bundles of straw, glisten with tiny drops of dew. The cottage around you feels small, almost impossibly small. The wooden beams above your head are rough and uneven, stained black from countless fires that have burned in the hearth below. Every board carries the marks of time. The air is cool and slightly damp, and the smell of old timber mixes with the lingering scent of wood smoke that never truly leaves the room. Outside, the earth is heavy with yesterday's rain. Each step across the village lane presses into thick, sticky mud. There are no paved roads here, only narrow tracks shaped by carts, livestock, and generations of tired feet. Somewhere in the distance, a rooster calls into the quiet morning. Another answers from farther away, their voices echoing softly through the mist. A few moments later, the deep sound of a church bell rolls across the countryside. Slow, steady, familiar. It marks the passing of time for every soul in the village, whether they are ready to greet the day or not. Thin ribbons of smoke begin to rise from scattered cottages as families wake to stir the embers left from the night before. The smell of burning oak drifts gently through the cold air, carrying with it the promise of warmth that will never quite reach every corner of the room. If you listen carefully, you may hear the quiet rustling of chickens in their coop, the distant lowing of cattle waiting to be fed, and the whisper of a chilly breeze slipping between the trees beyond the fields. There is no rush here. Let your breathing remain slow and steady. As you settle deeper into your blankets, allow these quiet sounds to become the background to your thoughts. You are safe, simply observing another life, one that unfolded more than 700 years ago, where every ordinary morning carried the weight of survival. And now, the first light of morning begins to appear. Your eyes open long before the sun has a chance to rise. There is no alarm clock waiting beside your bed, no soft melody easing you into the morning. Instead, you wake because the cold has found its way beneath your thin blanket once again. The chill settles into your bones during the darkest hours of the night, making uninterrupted sleep almost impossible. Beneath you is not a comfortable mattress, but a sack filled with straw. At first glance, it may seem better than sleeping directly on the hard dirt floor, yet the straw has become flattened after months of use. Sharp stalks press against your back, and every movement produces a dry, crackling sound that echoes through the tiny room. The blanket covering you is made from coarse wool. It offers some warmth, but it is rough against your skin, and it carries the familiar scent of smoke that seems to cling to every piece of clothing you own. As your eyes adjust to the darkness, the outlines of the cottage slowly appear. The room is much smaller than most people today would imagine. There are no separate bedrooms, no hallway, no quiet corner to escape to. Everything happens within this single space. Your parents sleep only a few steps away. Younger brothers and sisters lie curled beneath their own worn blankets. An elderly grandparent rests close to the hearth where the last glowing embers still offer a little warmth. Even the family's small possessions, a wooden chest, a rough table, a few stools, clay bowls, and simple cooking pots, share the same room. Privacy, as we understand it today, simply does not exist. Every conversation is heard. Every cough wakes someone else. Every restless turn during the night disturbs another sleeper. If a baby begins to cry, the entire household wakes together. If someone snores loudly, everyone listens until morning. Silence is rare, and solitude is almost unknown. The air itself feels heavy. For centuries, historians have described medieval cottages as smoky places, and with good reason. The hearth sits in the center of the home, burning wood or peat whenever fuel can be spared. Much of the smoke slowly escapes through a small opening in the roof, but plenty remains trapped inside. Over time, that smoke stains the wooden beams above your head a deep black. It settles into your clothes, your blanket, your hair, and even your skin. Your eyes often sting, and your throat grows used to the dry feeling that follows every evening beside the fire. Yet despite the smoke, the hearth is precious. Without it, winter nights would become unbearably cold. Food could not be cooked, water could not be heated. The family would lose its only dependable source of warmth. Life constantly asks you to accept one hardship in order to avoid another. As you slowly sit up, your feet touch the packed earth floor. It feels cold and slightly damp beneath your bare skin. The moisture from yesterday's rain has crept inside once again. Even after all these years, the cottage never truly feels dry. Tiny insects have also shared your bed throughout the night. Fleas hide within the straw mattress, waiting quietly until darkness falls. Their bites have become such a normal part of life that few people even stop to complain. Sometimes they leave small itchy marks along your arms and legs. Sometimes you barely notice them anymore. Cleanliness is difficult in this world. Fresh water must be carried by hand. Soap is uncommon. Bedding cannot easily be replaced. The tiny creatures simply become another ordinary part of daily life. Outside, the village still sleeps beneath a blanket of mist. Then, from somewhere beyond the fields, the first church bell breaks the silence. Its deep voice rolls gently across the countryside, one slow ring, then another, then another. The bell does more than announce the morning. It reminds every family that another day of labor has arrived. There is little choice in the matter. The fields will not wait. The animals must be fed. The Lord's land must be worked before your own. The sound reaches every cottage, every stable, every narrow lane covered in mud. Across the village, tired eyes slowly open just as yours have. One by one, families rise from their straw beds, preparing to repeat the same routine they followed yesterday, and the day before, and perhaps every day of their lives. For a few quiet moments, you remain where you are, gathering enough strength to face the hours ahead. But staying beside the fatting warmth of the hearth is a luxury you cannot afford, because the moment you step outside, the real work will begin. But leaving the cottage would prove even more exhausting. The warmth of the hearth fades behind you as the heavy wooden door creaks open. A wave of cold morning air immediately brushes across your face. The mist still hangs low over the village, softening the outlines of distant cottages and fields. The sky has begun to lighten, but the sun remains hidden below the horizon, leaving the world painted in shades of gray and pale blue. You pull your simple wool cloak a little tighter around your shoulders and step carefully onto the muddy ground. Your worn leather shoes offer little protection from the damp earth beneath your feet. Within moments, they are already wet. The village is slowly waking. A neighbor carries a wooden bucket across the lane. Another family is already outside, quietly tending to their animals. Smoke curls gently from the rooftops as the first cooking fires come back to life. There is no time to stretch, no quiet morning coffee, no slow beginning to the day. The animals must eat before the people do. You walk toward the small wooden shed where the family's livestock spent the night. A few chickens shuffle impatiently inside their enclosure, scratching at the dirt as though they have been waiting for your arrival. Their soft clucking fills the chilly air while you scatter handfuls of grain across the ground. Nearby, a pig lets out a loud grunt, reminding you that it expects breakfast as well. Pigs are valuable animals. They waste very little, eating scraps that people cannot, and one healthy pig can mean the difference between surviving winter and going hungry. The family's cow watches quietly as you approach with a bundle of hay. She is one of your greatest treasures. Her milk provides nourishment, butter, and cheese when food is scarce. Losing her would be a disaster that could take years to recover from. Once she is eaten, you settle onto a small wooden stool beside her. The morning air is cold against your hands as you begin milking. The steady rhythm soon becomes familiar: squeeze, release. Each stream of milk lands gently inside the wooden bucket with a quiet splash. It is peaceful in its own way, yet your fingers quickly become stiff from the cold. There are no machines here. Every drop is collected by hand, just as it has been for generations. Before long, another task is waiting: water. The cottage has no running water. Every bucket used for drinking, cooking, washing, or caring for animals must be carried from a nearby stream or village well. You lift two wooden buckets balanced on a carrying pole across your shoulders. Even while empty, they feel awkward. By the time they are filled, each careful step back toward the cottage becomes slower than the last. The muddy path offers no kindness. Deep footprints left by carts and livestock collect rainwater, forcing you to watch every step. One careless movement could spill half the morning's supply before reaching home. When the water has finally been carried inside, there is barely time to rest. Firewood must be gathered. Without wood, the hearth cannot cook bread or warm the family during the cool morning hours. Sometimes fallen branches are enough. Sometimes you must walk farther into nearby woodland, searching for anything dry enough to burn. Every bundle feels heavier than it looks. Every journey steals more precious time from the day. Back at the cottage, another unpleasant duty cannot be ignored. The animals have left behind manure throughout the night. Using a simple wooden shovel, you begin clearing the stable floor. The smell is strong, earthy, and impossible to escape. It clings to your clothes and fills the cool morning air. Although unpleasant, nothing is wasted in medieval life. The manure will later help fertilize the fields that must grow next season's crops. Even waste has value. Only after these chores are complete can anyone begin preparing breakfast. Inside the cottage, the hearth has grown warmer. A flat stone and simple clay oven wait beside the fire. Flour made from barley, rye, or oats is mixed with water into a rough dough. This is not the soft white bread many people enjoy today. The loaf is dark, heavy, and coarse. Tiny pieces of bran remain inside because the grain has not been finely milled. Every bite requires slow chewing, yet it fills the stomach better than nothing at all. Sometimes the bread is baked fresh. Other mornings, yesterday's loaf is simply warmed beside the fire. There may be a little cheese if the cow has produced enough milk. Perhaps an onion. Perhaps a handful of herbs stirred into a pot of simple pottage. Luxury rarely visits this table. Instead of fresh fruit juice or sweet tea, your breakfast is accompanied by thin ale. To modern ears, drinking ale first thing in the morning may sound unusual, but medieval water was not always safe to drink. Thin ale contained very little alcohol and was often safer than untreated water from rivers or wells. Even children sometimes drank it with meals. You lift the rough wooden cup to your lips. The taste is mild, slightly sour, and far weaker than the ales served in modern taverns. It offers a little nourishment, but very little comfort. Breakfast disappears quickly. No one lingers around the table telling stories. No one asks what the plans are for the day. Everyone already knows. The fields are waiting. The Lord's land must be worked, and every hour of daylight is precious. Breakfast was small, but the day's hardest work had only begun. The last crumbs of breakfast disappear quickly, and there is little time to rest. The fields are already waiting. You step away from the warmth of the cottage and begin walking toward the open countryside. The morning mist still lingers above the ground, drifting lazily across narrow paths that countless feet have traveled before yours. Around you, other villagers move in the same direction. There is very little conversation. Everyone knows what lies ahead. The workday has only just begun. As you reach the fields, the rich scent of damp earth rises into the cool morning air. Overnight rain has softened the soil, leaving it dark, heavy, and sticky beneath every step. Your boots sink slightly into the mud, making each stride just a little more difficult than the last. Before you stretches an endless patchwork of farmland. Some fields wait to be planted, others are ready for harvest. Every inch of land represents survival. Every season brings another chance. Or another disaster. There are no tractors resting nearby. No engines waiting to roar to life. Every task depends entirely on human strength and animal power. In front of you stands a heavy wooden plow. Its thick frame has been carefully built by local craftsmen, but that does not make it easy to use. Even when pulled by a patient ox, the plow fights against the stubborn ground with every passing yard. The handles vibrate beneath your hands as the iron blade cuts slowly into the wet soil. You lean your weight forward. Your shoulders tighten. Your arms begin to ache. The earth resists every movement. Hour after hour, the plow carves narrow lines across the field, preparing the land for another growing season. It is slow work, exhausting work, yet there is no faster way. When planting begins, the rhythm changes. A rough sack of seed hangs over your shoulder. With practiced movements, your hand reaches inside, gathers a small handful of grain, and scatters it across the freshly turned earth. The motion repeats again, and again, and again. Each step must be steady. Each handful must be even. Too much seed wastes precious grain. Too little leaves empty patches where nothing will grow. There are no measuring tools to guide you, only experience, only hope. As spring slowly becomes summer, another season of labor arrives, harvest. The fields that once stood green now shimmer with golden stalks bending gently in the breeze. From a distance they appear peaceful, almost beautiful. Up close, they demand everything your body can give. Holding a simple iron sickle, you bend low and begin cutting the grain by hand. The curved blade slices through handful after handful of wheat, barley, or rye. Each bundle is gathered carefully and tied before another waits to replace it. There is no shortcut, no machine to ease the burden, only thousands upon thousands of repeated movements. By midday, your lower back begins to protest. At first, it is only a dull stiffness. Soon it becomes a steady ache stretching from your shoulders to your hips. You straighten for a moment, grateful for even a few seconds of relief, but the field before you seems almost unchanged. So much remains to be done before sunset. Around you, children work beside their parents. Older men and women continue despite aching joints. Entire families labor together because every pair of hands matters. No one can afford to remain idle. The weather offers little kindness. Some days the rain returns without warning. Dark clouds gather overhead, and within minutes cold drops begin soaking your clothes. The earth grows heavier beneath your feet. The tools become slippery in your hands. Still, the work continues. Stopping is rarely an option. The crops cannot wait for better weather. On other days, the opposite challenge arrives. The summer sun climbs higher into the sky, pouring warmth over the open fields hour after hour. Sweat gathers beneath your wool clothing, trickling slowly down your back. Dust clings to your skin. Your mouth becomes dry, yet there is little time for long breaks. You simply keep moving, one row after another. One bundle after another, 1 hour after another. The sun slowly crosses the sky while your shadow stretches and shrinks across the earth. Morning quietly becomes afternoon. Afternoon begins drifting toward evening. Still, the work refuses to end. During the busiest seasons, a peasant may spend 10, 12, even 14 hours outdoors before finally returning home. By then, your hands are rough with blisters. Your shoulders burn with fatigue. Your legs feel strangely heavy, as though every step requires conscious effort. Yet tomorrow, the same work will begin again. And the day after that. For most medieval peasants, this was not an unusual week. It was simply life. As you take one final look across the endless fields, you might think this relentless labor was the greatest hardship a peasant could face. But you would be mistaken. Yet the fields were not the greatest burden. As the long hours in the fields finally begin to slow, your body reminds you of something that has quietly followed you since dawn. Hunger. Not the kind of hunger that appears a little before lunchtime. Not the gentle feeling that can be satisfied with a quick snack. This is a slower companion, one that rarely leaves. It settles deep inside your stomach and stays there, day after day, becoming so familiar that many medieval peasants simply accepted it as another part of life. After hours of bending, lifting, digging, and walking through heavy fields, your body craves a generous meal. But that is not what awaits you. Instead, you return to the cottage where a simple pot hangs above the fire. Inside, a thick stew slowly bubbles. This humble meal is called pottage, and for countless medieval families, it appears on the table almost every single day. If you were expecting rich flavors or exciting ingredients, you may be disappointed. Pottage changes only slightly from season to season. Whatever can be grown, gathered, or spared finds its way into the pot, perhaps a handful of barley, perhaps a few oats, sometimes dried peas or beans, wild herbs collected from nearby hedgerows, a little cabbage, an onion if the harvest has been kind. Everything simmers together for hours until it becomes soft enough to eat with a wooden spoon. It is warm, it is filling, but it is rarely exciting. The same meal returns tomorrow, and the day after that. Bread sits beside the bowl, dark and heavy. Unlike the soft white loaves found in modern bakeries, medieval peasant bread is made from rye, barley, oats, or coarse wheat. Tiny pieces of bran remain mixed into the flour, giving every slice a rough texture. Sometimes small bits of grit from the grinding stones become trapped inside the dough, slowly wearing down people's teeth over many years. Even bread carries its own quiet hardship. You tear away a piece and dip it into the steaming pottage. Nothing is wasted. Every crumb matters. Every bite represents hours of work in the fields. Fresh vegetables help when they are available. Onions grow well and store through much of the year, making them one of the most dependable foods in the village. Their sharp flavor brightens otherwise plain meals. Cabbage is equally valuable. It survives cooler weather better than many other crops and can feed an entire family when little else remains. Turnips, leeks, and carrots may also appear on fortunate days, depending on the season and the success of the harvest. Fruit is less predictable. Perhaps a few apples in autumn, a handful of berries gathered from nearby woods. But sweet foods remain rare luxuries rather than everyday comforts. Many people today imagine medieval feasts overflowing with roasted meat. For kings and wealthy nobles, that image is not entirely false. For peasants, it could not be further from reality. Meat is precious. A family may keep chickens for eggs or raise a pig throughout the year, but slaughtering an animal is a serious decision. Once it is gone, it cannot produce more food tomorrow. Most families save meat for special occasions, religious festivals, weddings, or the difficult months of winter. Weeks may pass without tasting it at all. Instead, protein comes from beans, peas, cheese, or the occasional fish caught in nearby rivers if local rules allow it. Even with careful planning, the human body often receives less nourishment than it truly needs. Children grow slowly. Adults remain thin. Hard physical labor burns thousands of calories each day, yet the food available rarely replaces everything that has been spent. There are no vitamins measured by doctors, no nutrition labels, no refrigerators preserving fresh food. Everything depends on the harvest, and harvests are uncertain. One season of heavy rain may rot the grain before it can be gathered. A summer drought can leave fields cracked and empty. Unexpected frost may destroy young crops before they have a chance to mature. When this happens, the village enters a season everyone quietly fears: food shortages. The bread grows smaller. The pottage becomes thinner. Families stretch every sack of grain for as long as possible. Parents sometimes pretend they are not hungry so their children can eat a little more. Neighbors share what little they have, knowing they may soon need help themselves. Then winter arrives. The fields stand empty beneath cold skies. Fresh vegetables disappear. The last onions hang from wooden beams. The final cabbages have already been eaten. Barrels of grain grow lighter with every passing week. Each meal becomes a careful calculation. How much can be eaten today? While leaving enough for tomorrow, by late winter, Some cottages have almost nothing left. People search the forests for nuts hidden beneath fallen leaves. They gather roots from frozen ground. Some grind acorns into coarse flour after carefully removing their bitterness. Others mix whatever grain remains with wild plants simply to make the bread last another day. For many families, surviving until spring becomes the greatest victory of all. As you sit quietly beside the fatting fire, holding the last piece of coarse bread in your hand, you might believe hunger is the greatest challenge a medieval peasant could possibly endure. But another burden waits patiently. One that arrives whether the harvest has been generous or poor. One that asks for payment even when your own family has almost nothing left. And then came the taxes. The last piece of bread disappears, but the feeling of hunger remains. You quietly set your wooden bowl aside and look out across the fields that have occupied nearly every hour of your day. It would be comforting to believe that all of your hard work belongs to you. That the grain you planted, the crops you harvested, and the land you cared for would eventually reward your family. But in medieval England, around the year 1320, life was rarely that simple. The land beneath your feet is not yours. It belongs to your lord. Nearly every village is part of a larger estate known as a manor. At its center stands the lord's manor house, surrounded by barns, workshops, and fields. Beyond those buildings are the cottages where families like yours have lived for generations. You are allowed to work a small strip of land to feed your household. But permission is not the same as ownership. The fields can never truly be called yours. You cannot simply pack your belongings and move to another village whenever you wish. You cannot decide to stop working the land. Your family's life is closely tied to this place, just as your parents' lives were before you, and perhaps their parents before them. For many peasants, the manor is the entire world. Its boundaries shape every season of life. Its rules reach into nearly every decision. Every harvest brings hope, but it also brings obligation. When grain has finally been gathered and stored, a portion must be given to the Lord as rent for using his land. Sometimes the payment comes as sacks of barley or wheat. Other times it may include chickens, eggs, wool, or other goods the family has managed to produce. Each basket carried away feels heavier than its weight alone. Every bundle represents hours of labor that will never feed your own family. Yet refusing to pay is not truly an option. The Lord expects what is owed, and everyone knows the consequences of ignoring that expectation. Your responsibilities do not end there. The village church also asks for its share. Known as the tithe, this payment is traditionally 1/10 of what you produce. Grain, vegetables, lambs, wool, or whatever the harvest has provided may all become part of that offering. For medieval people, faith is woven into everyday life. The church bell marks the passing of each day. Religious festivals shape the calendar. Most people sincerely believe that honoring God is essential not only for this life, but for the life to come. Giving the tithe is therefore more than a financial duty. It is also a spiritual one. Still, for a family already struggling with hunger, watching another portion of the harvest leave the cottage can be heartbreaking. After paying rent, after giving the tithe, very little remains, but the demands continue. Several days each week, you are expected to leave your own small field behind and work directly on the Lord's land. This is known as labor service. You receive no wages. Instead, your work is considered part of the price for living on the manor. So while your own crops quietly wait for attention, you spend long hours plowing the Lord's fields, repairing fences, clearing ditches, gathering hay, or helping with harvests that will never belong to you. Every hour spent there is an hour taken from your own family, yet there is no choice. These are the duties expected under the feudal system. Life follows a clear order. The king rules the kingdom. Great nobles serve the king, lords oversee their manors, and peasants carry much of the work that allows the entire system to survive. Very few people ever move beyond the place into which they are born. Opportunity is limited. Freedom is even rarer. If another village seems more prosperous, you cannot simply leave. If better land lies beyond the hills, it is not yours to claim. Your life is deeply connected to the manor where you were born, and escaping that life is almost impossible for most people. Every decision is shaped by obligation. Every season begins with responsibility. Every harvest already belongs, at least in part, to someone else. And quietly, beneath all these expectations, another feeling follows you wherever you go: fear. Not loud fear, not constant panic, a quieter kind. The fear of disappointing the Lord, the fear of falling behind after a poor harvest, the fear that illness might prevent you from completing your duties, the fear that one mistake could bring punishment not only upon yourself, but upon your entire family. Most days pass peacefully enough, but everyone knows someone who has stood before the manor court, someone who failed to pay what was owed, someone accused of breaking a village rule, someone forced to explain why obligations had not been met. Justice in the medieval village can sometimes be fair. Other times, it depends greatly upon the people holding authority, so families do everything they can to avoid attracting unwanted attention. They work, they obey, they endure. As the evening shadows slowly stretch across the fields once more, you might think that after surrendering part of your harvest, after paying rent, after giving the church its share, after working the Lord's land without pay, surely the hardest part of life is over. But medieval life always finds another challenge waiting just beyond the next sunrise, because even after paying everything, danger still waited. As another day slowly drifts toward evening, your muscles ache from endless labor, your stomach is only partly satisfied, and your mind longs for rest. Yet there is one burden that no amount of hard work can escape: illness. In the medieval world, sickness is never very far away. It moves quietly through villages, hidden in the water people drink, the food they eat, the animals they care for, and the crowded cottages they call home. Unlike many of us today, you cannot visit a nearby clinic when you develop a fever. There is no pharmacy waiting at the end of the road. No antibiotics, no painkillers, no ambulance arriving in moments. Most illnesses must simply run their course, and everyone hopes they survive. Each morning begins with a walk to the village well or a nearby stream. Buckets are lowered into the water, carried back to the cottage, and used for drinking, cooking, and washing. The water looks clear enough, but appearances can be deceiving. Animals often drink from the very same streams. Rain washes waste from roads and fields into the water. During warmer months, harmful bacteria spread without anyone knowing they exist. No one understands germs. The tiny invisible organisms that cause disease will remain unknown for centuries. If someone becomes sick after drinking contaminated water, people usually search for explanations they can understand. Some believe the illness is caused by bad air. Others see it as God's will or a test of faith. The real cause remains hidden. Even a small cut can become dangerous. While repairing fences, chopping wood, or harvesting grain, tiny wounds appear almost every day. Most seem harmless at first: a scratch on the hand, a cut across a finger, a splinter buried beneath the skin. Today, these injuries might heal within days. In medieval England, they can become something far more serious. Without clean bandages or effective medicines, bacteria enter the wound. The skin grows red and swollen. Fever follows. What began as a minor accident may soon threaten a person's life. Sometimes the strongest worker in the village simply disappears from the fields, not because of war, not because of old age, but because a small injury never healed. Children face even greater dangers. The sound of young voices playing outside the cottages brings comfort to every parent, yet childhood itself is uncertain. Many bobbies never celebrate their first birthday. Others survive only a few years before illness claims them. Fever, pneumonia, diarrheal diseases, malnutrition. To modern ears, these illnesses often sound treatable. 700 years ago, they are among the greatest fears every family carries. Parents love their children just as deeply as parents do today. They simply live in a world where loss is heartbreakingly common. Life teaches people to treasure every healthy day because tomorrow is never guaranteed. Even something as ordinary as a toothache can become unbearable. Your teeth work hard every day, chewing coarse bread filled with tiny fragments of stone left behind during grinding. Slowly, year after year, the enamel wears away. A cavity forms, then infection. The pain grows stronger with each passing meal. There are no dentists, no modern fillings, no gentle numbing injections. Sometimes the only solution is to pull the tooth by force. The relief, if it comes at all, is brief. Broken bones tell another difficult story. Imagine slipping while carrying heavy firewood, or being kicked by a frightened horse, or falling beneath a loaded cart. The sharp crack echoes through your body. The pain is immediate. If the bone heals correctly, you may eventually return to work. If it heals poorly, you may spend the rest of your life walking with difficulty or struggling to lift even simple tools. For a peasant whose survival depends upon physical labor, such an injury changes everything. As the years pass, stories begin spreading across Europe about a terrifying sickness unlike anything people have ever known. Travelers speak in hushed voices. Merchants whisper frightening rumors. Entire towns, they say, have been emptied. Although the year is still 1320, and the Great Plague has not yet reached England, history tells us that within only a few decades, the Black Death will sweep across Europe with astonishing speed. It will claim the lives of millions. Villages much like yours will lose parents, children, neighbors, priests, blacksmiths, and farmers. Some communities will never fully recover. Knowing what lies ahead adds a quiet sadness to this peaceful countryside. The people working these fields have no idea what history is preparing for them. For those of us looking back through the centuries, that knowledge feels almost impossible to ignore. And here is a quiet truth that many people never realize. For an ordinary medieval peasant, the greatest danger was often not war, but everyday life itself, a drink of contaminated water, a small infected cut, a painful tooth, or a simple fever. Any one of these could end a life long before old age ever had the chance. It is a gentle reminder of just how fragile daily existence could be. As darkness slowly settles over the village once again, you may find yourself grateful that your body has survived another difficult day. But in the medieval world, surviving illness is only the beginning, because tomorrow still demands the same exhausting work, the same heavy responsibilities, the same uncertain future. Surviving illness did not mean life became easier. You have survived another season, at least. That is what you tell yourself. In medieval England, surviving one season never guarantees that you will survive the next. Every change in the weather brings a new challenge, and every new challenge carries the power to change an entire village forever. You do not fear the passing of time. You fear what each season might bring. Winter arrives slowly at first. The leaves disappear from the trees, the fields turn pale, and each morning begins with a sharper bite in the air. Soon, frost covers the ground before sunrise, sparkling faintly beneath the first light of day. Inside your small cottage, the fire burns almost constantly. Even so, warmth never reaches every corner. Cold air slips through the gaps between the wooden planks. It creeps beneath the door. It settles onto your straw mattress long before you climb into bed. You wrap yourself in your coarse wool blanket, but your fingers remain cold. Your feet remain cold. Sometimes you wake during the night simply because the chill has become impossible to ignore. Outside, the fields rest beneath frozen earth. Nothing grows. Nothing can be harvested. The animals must survive on the hay carefully stored during the warmer months. Every bundle fed to the livestock means there will be slightly less remaining tomorrow. Firewood becomes almost as valuable as food. Families carefully count each log before placing it into the hearth. Burn too much today, and there may not be enough left before spring arrives. Winter teaches patience. It also teaches worry. When spring finally returns, hope rises once again. The frozen ground begins to soften. Birds return to the hedgerows. The fields seem ready to awaken. But spring brings its own problems. Days of rain transform narrow village paths into thick rivers of mud. Every journey becomes slower. Every cartwheel sinks deeper into the earth. Boots disappear beneath sticky clay that clings stubbornly to every step. Even the simplest chore becomes exhausting. Carrying water, gathering wood, leading animals to pasture. Everything requires more effort than before. Some years, the rain refuses to stop. Week after week, dark clouds gather overhead. The sky remains gray from morning until evening. The fields become saturated. Seeds struggle beneath the soaked earth. Young plants begin to rot before they have the chance to grow. Streams overflow their banks. Water quietly spreads across nearby farmland, covering crops beneath shallow floods. A single flooded field may destroy months of careful work, An entire village watches helplessly as the water slowly claims its future harvest. No one can bargain with the rain. No one can command the river to return to its banks. All anyone can do is wait. Then, without warning, another year brings the opposite disaster. The clouds disappear. Day after day, the sun shines brightly across the countryside. At first, everyone welcomes the pleasant weather soon. The ground begins to crack, the streams shrink. Grass turns brown, young crops struggle beneath the relentless heat. Without enough rain, grain cannot fully mature. The ears of wheat remain small. The barley grows thin. The harvest that should have filled barns instead fills only a few baskets. A poor harvest does not simply mean smaller meals. It means fear. Families quietly calculate how long their remaining grain will last. Parents save seed for the following spring, even though everyone is hungry today. Some villages survive. Others are less fortunate. Crop failures are among the greatest disasters a medieval peasant can face. There are no refrigerated warehouses filled with extra food waiting hundreds of miles away. No trucks bringing emergency supplies. If the harvest fails here, the village itself suffers. One difficult season often leads directly into another. Hunger grows. Illness spreads more easily among weakened bodies. The elderly become frail. Children lose weight. Even healthy workers begin feeling weaker as winter approaches once again. Nature never promises fairness. It simply follows its own rhythm. As you sit quietly beside the fatting fire, listening to the wind outside your tiny cottage, you realize something that every medieval peasant eventually understands. You can work from sunrise until sunset. You can prepare the fields perfectly. You can plant every seed with care, and still, a single season can erase an entire year's labor. The weather never asks whether you are ready. It simply arrives, yet for all the hardships brought by freezing winters, endless mud, relentless rain, floods, drought, and failed harvests, nature was only one part of the struggle, because sometimes nature could be cruel, but people could be even harsher. The weather may decide whether your crops survive, but people decide whether your life remains peaceful. In your village, there are rules for nearly everything. Rules about where animals may graze, rules about gathering wood from the Lord's forest, rules about maintaining fences, rules about paying rent on time, rules about using the village mill or oven. Some rules have existed for generations, passed from parent to child, until no one remembers exactly when they began. Breaking one may seem like a small mistake. Yet even a small mistake can become a very public lesson. Life on the manor depends upon order. Every family understands that the Lord expects obedience, and the village officials are responsible for making sure those expectations are followed. Most disagreements never become violent. Instead, they are settled before the manor court. Unlike the grand royal courts that decide matters of kings and nobles, the manor court is much smaller. It usually gathers several times each year. Villagers assemble together. The lord, or more often his steward, listens to complaints, hears accusations, and decides what should happen next. Perhaps someone's cow wandered into another family's field. Perhaps a fence was left unrepaired. Perhaps rent was paid late. Perhaps someone gathered firewood where it was forbidden. These may sound like ordinary problems to us today. In medieval England, they are taken seriously because every harvest, every animal, and every piece of land affects the survival of the entire community. When your name is called before the court, your heart begins beating a little faster. The room itself is quiet. Neighbors watch silently. Everyone knows that one day it could be their turn. Many punishments do not involve long prison sentences. In fact, prisons are uncommon for ordinary village offenses. Instead, justice is often designed to embarrass, to remind, to discourage others from making the same mistake. One of the most recognizable punishments is the village stocks. Imagine a heavy wooden frame standing in the center of the village. It has openings for your ankles, and sometimes for your wrists. Once locked inside, you cannot walk away. You remain there while the rest of the village passes by. Children stop to stare. Neighbors whisper quietly. Some people laugh. Others simply shake their heads before continuing on with their day. The discomfort is real. But the public shame often hurts even more. Your mistake becomes everyone's conversation. For people living in a small village where nearly everyone knows each other, reputation is precious. Losing the respect of your neighbors can linger long after the punishment itself has ended. Not every offense leads to the stocks. Very often, the punishment is a fine, perhaps a few coins, perhaps several chickens, perhaps a portion of grain from the coming harvest. To a wealthy noble, such payments may seem small. To a peasant family already counting every loaf of bread, they can be devastating. A single fine may leave less food for winter, less seed for spring planting, less hope for the months ahead. That is why villagers try so carefully to avoid unnecessary trouble. The fear is not only about pain, it is about survival. Authority surrounds daily life in quiet ways. When the steward rides through the village, people notice. When officials inspect the fields, everyone works a little harder. When the church bell rings for meetings or announcements, families gather without delay. Very few people openly challenge those placed above them. Most simply lower their eyes, speak respectfully, and continue with their duties. It is not always because they admire authority, often. It is because they understand the consequences of resisting it. Children learn these lessons early. Parents remind them to behave respectfully, to avoid arguments, to keep promises, to work honestly. Not only because these are good values, but because life becomes much more difficult when the attention of those in power turns toward your family. Fortunately, many days pass without conflict. Neighbors help one another during harvest. Families gather for church. Children laugh while chasing chickens across muddy yards. Life is not entirely without kindness. Yet beneath those ordinary moments lies a quiet understanding. The rules are always there. The manor court is always there. Authority is always watching. And everyone hopes they will never be the next person standing before the village. As evening slowly approaches once again, the day's worries begin to settle into your tired body. The fields are quiet. The court has finished its business. The village grows calm beneath the fatting light. You imagine that perhaps, at last, you may finally find a little peace. But medieval life rarely allows one hardship to end without another quietly taking its place. As darkness returned, another challenge was waiting. The sun slowly slips below the rolling hills, and the golden light that once stretched across the fields begins to disappear. For the first time since before dawn, your work finally comes to an end. Your shoulders feel heavy. Your hands are rough and sore. Your boots are covered with dried mud gathered from countless steps across the fields. Every muscle quietly reminds you how long this day has been. The walk back to the village is slower than the walk that brought you there this morning. No one has much energy left for conversation. The narrow paths are peaceful now. A few chickens wander back toward their coops. Cows are led into their shelters for the night. Thin trails of smoke rise gently from cottage rooftops as families prepare their evening meal. The familiar smell of burning wood fills the cool evening air. As you reach your cottage, you push open the heavy wooden door. The warmth of the hearth greets you once again. It is not a great warmth. It barely reaches the corners of the small room. But after a long day outside, even this simple comfort feels welcome. The room grows dim as daylight fades. A single tallow candle is carefully lit. Its small yellow flame flickers gently, casting long dancing shadows across the rough wooden walls. The candle gives very little light. Every family knows it must be used sparingly. Tallow candles are valuable, and making new ones requires precious animal fat. Many evenings, the glowing fire itself provides most of the light. Supper is simple. A pot of pottage still hangs above the hearth, slowly warming over the remaining embers. Perhaps another piece of coarse bread waits beside it. If fortune has been kind, there may be a little cheese or a few onions left from the day's stores. No one expects a feast. No one complains. The meal is eaten quietly. After working from before sunrise until sunset, hunger makes even the simplest food feel satisfying. Wooden spoons gently scrape against clay bowls. The fire crackles softly. Outside, the evening breeze moves through the trees with a quiet whisper. It is a peaceful moment. One of the few the day has offered. When supper has finished, there is still work to be done. Life does not stop simply because darkness has arrived. You notice a tear in your wool tunic where rough branches caught the fabric earlier in the week. Taking a bone needle and coarse thread, you carefully begin repairing the damage. Each stitch is slow. Each stitch matters. New clothing is expensive. Most garments must last for many years. Small tears are repaired again and again, until the original fabric is almost hidden beneath careful patches. Nearby, another family member quietly repairs worn shoes. Someone else twists loose wool into thread. Nothing useful is thrown away. Every object has value. Every possession is expected to serve the family for as long as possible. Soon the work begins to slow. The candle burns lower. The room grows quieter. Before climbing into bed, the family gathers together near the hearth. Heads bow gently, hands fold quietly. A simple prayer is spoken. Some thank God for another day of safety. Others pray for healthy animals, for better weather, for a successful harvest, for children who have fallen ill, for enough food to carry the family through another winter. Faith offers comfort in a world where so much remains uncertain. When the prayer has ended, silence returns. There are no glowing television screens, no radios playing music, no telephones, no books waiting on a bedside table for most ordinary families. Stories may occasionally be shared. Perhaps an older grandparent remembers an old village tale. Perhaps children listen with sleepy eyes as someone speaks of saints, travelers, or mysterious creatures said to live deep within the forest. But after such a long day, even stories become difficult to finish. The body asks for only one thing: rest. Yawns quietly spread through the room. Children curl beneath rough blankets. Parents stretch aching backs before lying down beside them. The straw mattress is no softer than it was the night before. The blanket is still rough. The air still carries the scent of smoke. Yet exhaustion has a way of making almost any place feel welcoming. Outside, the village grows wonderfully still. The last voices fade into the distance. The animals settle inside their shelters. The church bell no longer calls anyone to work. Only the gentle crackling of the dying fire remains. Tomorrow will bring another sunrise, another day in the fields, another struggle to earn enough food, another cycle that has repeated itself for generations. But for this one quiet moment, none of those worries matter. Your eyes grow heavier. Your breathing becomes slower. The little candle flickers one final time before the darkness gently fills the room. And finally, night arrived. The little candle has finally gone out. Darkness settles gently over the cottage, broken only by the soft orange glow of a few dying embers in the hearth. Outside, the village has become wonderfully quiet. The animals have settled for the night. The wind moves softly through the trees, and somewhere far away, an owl calls into the darkness. Your body can work no longer. Every step you took across the muddy fields, every bucket of water you carried, every seed you planted, every bundle of grain you harvested, now feels like a distant memory, leaving behind only a deep and quiet exhaustion. You slowly lower yourself onto your bed. Calling it a bed is perhaps a kindness. It is little more than a rough sack filled with dry straw, spread across a simple wooden frame. The straw shifts beneath your weight with a soft, rustling sound. Some pieces are broken and sharp, pressing gently against your back through the coarse wool blanket. It is not comfortable. But after a day like this, comfort is no longer something you expect. It is enough simply to lie down. Almost immediately, tiny fleas begin their nightly search for warmth. Hidden inside the straw throughout the day, they now become active once more. Their bites are irritating, but hardly surprising. They have shared this cottage with your family for as long as anyone can remember. You brush at your sleeve almost without thinking. It has become another ordinary part of life. The air inside the cottage still carries the familiar scent of wood smoke. It clings to the walls, your blanket, your hair, and your clothes. Your eyes feel slightly dry from breathing it every day, yet without the fire, the cold would quickly become unbearable. Even now, the warmth fades little by little. Cold air slips through tiny cracks between the wooden boards. It gathers around the floor. It creeps quietly beneath your blanket. You pull the rough wool closer around your shoulders and hope it will be enough until morning. Your stomach is no longer empty, but it is not truly full either. The simple bread and pottage have taken away the sharpest edge of hunger, yet a familiar emptiness remains. It is a feeling that has accompanied you for much of your life. You have learned not to fight it, only to live beside it. As your breathing becomes slower, your thoughts begin drifting toward tomorrow. Before sunrise, the church bell will ring again. The animals will need feeding. Water will need carrying. The fields will still be waiting. The soil will still demand your strength. The weather will still decide your future. Nothing will be easier simply because one day has ended. Tomorrow will look remarkably like today, and the day after that, and perhaps every day for years to come. For most medieval peasants, life did not change through dramatic adventures or extraordinary victories. There were no cheering crowds, no glorious celebrations, no songs written about ordinary families who quietly endured one difficult season after another. History often remembers kings, queens, great battles, magnificent castles, but the true foundation of medieval life rested upon countless ordinary people whose names have long been forgotten. People who woke before dawn, worked until sunset, loved their families, faced hunger with quiet courage, and hoped that tomorrow might be just a little kinder than today. Their lives were not heroic in the way stories often describe heroism. They were something quieter, something far more ordinary, and perhaps, in their own way, something deeply remarkable. Life was not heroic. It was simply survival. And now, our own journey through this single day has come to an end. Thankfully, you can open your eyes knowing that the straw mattress has become your own comfortable bed. The cold cottage has become your warm home, and the hardships of medieval England are safely behind us, resting only within the pages of history. Thank you for spending this peaceful evening with me. If you enjoyed traveling through the quieter side of history, I would love for you to subscribe to Sleepy History Tales official and join our growing community. There are many more gentle journeys waiting for us, each one carrying us to another forgotten place and another forgotten time, until our next story. Take one slow, peaceful breath. Let your shoulders relax. Allow your thoughts to drift as gently as the embers fading into the night. Sleep well. Sweet dreams. And goodbye for now.